Welcome back to a special edition of Hannity. President Trump's America First agenda in full effect. Get this. After the United States negotiated a $285 million cut to the United Nations bloated budget. Of course, this comes as President Trump and U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley blasted, and I mean blasted, the UN General Assembly for holding a vote to rebuke the United States' decision to move its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Watch this.
The United States will remember this day in which it was singled out for attack in the General Assembly for the very act of exercising our right as a sovereign nation. We will remember it when we are called upon to once again make the world's largest contribution to the United Nations. And we will remember it when so many countries come calling on us, as they so often do, to pay even more and to use our influence for their benefit.
The United States, the people that live here are great citizens that love this country. They're tired of this country being taken advantage of, and we're not going to be taken advantage of any longer.
By the way, as an added note, Guatemala now announcing that they will move their embassy into Jerusalem as well. So I wonder when the vote's coming up in the UN on that. In the wake of their anti-Israel, anti-American positions, and with the U.S. contributing more, and I say more, to the UN's budget than any other nation, should the Trump administration take even more financial steps to put them on notice? Joining us now, former United States Ambassador to the United Nations and Fox News contributor John Bolton, as well as COO of the East-West Institute and a retired U.S. naval officer, Dr. Bill Parker, who, by the way, author of a great book that I have on my shelf and I read, Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century. You two gentlemen have been at work, whether in the military, in the ambassadorial corps, and in administrations doing this job. First to you, Ambassador Bolton. Great to see you again. I know where you stand on this, but I want to hear it from you. I think I know where you stand on this. What about this cut? What is it really, and what does it mean?
Well, this particular cut was baked in the cake before the Jerusalem vote, but certainly it's worthwhile to get the budget lower even by that amount. But I think it provides the Trump administration with an excellent pivot point to look at the larger question of what elements of the UN system are functioning successfully and what are not, and to move away from the system of international taxation, in effect, that we're under now, where, as you say, we pay 22% of the regular budget, 28% of the even larger peacekeeping budget. And just decide that we're going to contribute voluntarily to what we think works, and either substantially reduce or zero out of those programs and offices that we don't think work. Now, this would be like a tsunami through the UN system, but if we could carry through with it, it would actually make it more efficient and more effective.
All right, now there's an ambassador I know. He might have been on this show with us, or he might even be here now, Dr. Parker, who said that sometimes in diplomacy, your choices aren't that good. I'm using the cleaned up version of this. Do you think this sends a signal to the United Nations?
Look, the United Nations is a very important body. There's no doubt about that. Very important. But at the end of the day, efficiency and effectiveness matters. And the reality is, as Ambassador Bolton just pointed out, 22% of that total funding came from the United States, where 9% came from Japan and 8% came from China, and the rest are much smaller. So to say we need to get more efficient and more effective, I think is spot on. We do need to take a good hard look at that, but we also need to realize how important the United Nations is to the overall body of the globe.
All right, so Ambassador Bolton, as I mentioned, Guatemala now, they're announcing, and other nations are indicating they may do this, in moving their embassies to Jerusalem. Is there another story here? Have you discerned anything from this?
Well, look, the government of Israel has been working on this for some time, and I'm sure they're going to try and take advantage of it. I think other countries may make that decision as well. I think the president's biggest problem having recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, his biggest problem in moving the U.S. embassy is going to be at the U.S. State Department, where they just don't like this idea one little bit. And I think the president's a real estate executive. He knows how to get things built. My advice to him would be to move forward, select the site, do the planning, and start turning dirt as soon as possible. That, in effect, I think would really induce other countries to look at moving into West Jerusalem, which is where all of them would be, without prejudice to the ultimate outcome of the peace negotiations.
You know, on the other side of this, Dr. Parker, Turkey has announced that they are also going to move their consulate, I believe is what they call it, to Jerusalem, and this is their connection to Palestine. Does that indicate anything about the geopolitical or the regional political issues?
It indicates that this is a complex environment, and it's not going to get any easier anytime soon. When you look at the Sunni-Shia issues around the globe, when you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, that's not going to change. So the reality is that the complexities are there, and you're going to continue to see countries decide whether or not they want to move their embassies to Jerusalem, or they want to keep them in other places.
All right, gentlemen, let's bring this together, because another issue on the table, North Korea, and that has been, we've seen a seed change in years, decades-long policy, at least since the 90s, in how we deal with North Korea. First to you, Ambassador Bolton. Russia now saying, and this came out of the news this morning, they're willing to be the broker of a deal between U.S. and North Korea. But from the historical track, what do we see, and where are we now with North Korea? Could Russia play a role?
Well, I think it would be a waste of oxygen. Look, we've negotiated with North Korea for 25 years. They've committed on at least 4 separate and distinct occasions to give up their nuclear weapons program in exchange for tangible benefits. They've lied every time they've made that commitment. There's simply no evidence that in year 26 the North Koreans are going to do this any differently. In fact, we've got tonight a very interesting comparison. Reuters has a story that says China's statistics show no oil exported to North Korea last month. But we've got papers published in the South Korean press overnight showing at least 30 examples of ship-to-ship transfers of oil between Chinese and North Korean vessels during the last couple of months. So this is something that we've been played by the North Koreans and played by the Chinese for a long time. I think we're still waiting for China to do something dramatic, but if it doesn't, we're faced with some very, very unpleasant choices unless you're prepared to see North Korea with nuclear weapons.
All right. So, Dr. Parker, you have been involved in this to some degree. You have traveled a great deal to brief others and talk about this issue. Walk us through the scenario of where we are now and what we should do or not do.
So this is a complex environment in the backyard of China, of South Korea, of Japan. And when you look at those 3 countries and what they're dealing with right now, if they do nothing, if we do nothing as a globe, and we allow North Korea to maintain their nuclear weapons program and advance them to the point that they're close to right now, what you're going to end up with is likely a nuclear South Korea, a nuclear Japan, and therefore a concerned China that increases their nuclear capability and their defense capability. But it gets better. It gets better because then Iran sees that North Korea, quote, got away with it. And now what you end up with a potential of nuclear weapons in and around the Gulf as well. And if that happens, you're going to end up losing control of that fissile material, and that's a very complicated problem. And we haven't even talked about the finances and the issues on the impact of the economy yet.
Well, before we get to that, South Korea's view of this, specifically South Korea, where are we with them and where do they stand?
Well, South Korea is interesting because before you can talk about a unified Korea, you have to talk about a unified South Korea. And to talk about a unified South Korea, you have to ask the question of whether or not you want a unified peninsula, and then whether or not you want WMD within South Korea itself. If you talk to government officials over there, many of them will say that you need the nuclear capability in order to execute a mutual assured destruction capability from South Korea towards the North Koreans. And Japan would say the same thing.
All right, back to you, Ambassador. Are we at a new potential Cold War in modern form?
Well, I think we're at a critical point in terms of the 50-year effort to prevent the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, because if we fail to stop North Korea, and they are very close to the ability to hit targets in the United States with thermonuclear weapons, then I think that effort will have crashed into complete failure, because it won't just be North Korea. They will sell these capabilities to anybody with hard currency, to Iran if they're not already doing work together on the nuclear side, to terrorist groups if they could come up with the money, to other nuclear weapon states. And then you're going to see this proliferation worldwide. It will be a much more dangerous world. Trump inherited this. He didn't create this situation, but it will be on his watch that we either stop it in North Korea or we face a real expansion of nuclear and actually biological and chemical weapons as well all around the world.
Dr. Bill Parker, CEO at the East-West Institute, and a great new book, Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century. And Ambassador Bolton, you have been working hard to guarantee our security for many years. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. I'm Mark Stein. Tucker is off celebrating Boxing Day, which is deplorably un-American of him. We hope you all enjoyed a Christmas respite from politics, but it hasn't taken long for things to get back into full swing. This morning, motivated by a story he saw here on Fox, President Trump lashed out against the FBI over the infamous salacious Trump dossier. The president tweeted, "Wow, dossier is bogus. Clinton campaign DNC funded dossier. FBI cannot, after all of this time, verify claims in dossier of Russia-Trump collusion. FBI tainted." And they use this crooked Hillary pile of garbage as the basis for going after the Trump campaign. Robin Biro was regional campaign director for Barack Obama's presidential campaign. Robin, this MI6 agent cooked up the dossier in a couple of weeks, and the FBI have been investigating it now for a year and a half and have been unable to confirm anything except that one guy called Carter Page did actually get on a plane to Russia at some point. Otherwise, after 18 months, all uncorroborated. How much time do you think the FBI should take? Another 2 years, another 3 years, 4 years, 5?
I sure hope not, Mark, because the taxpayers are funding this investigation. I do want to remember that. But the FBI has a responsibility to go through all of anything that's presented to them as possible evidence and leave no stone unturned. That includes this dossier. So much of it has been found to be not true. The veracity, they say, should be very much questioned. But just like any law enforcement official, they have to follow the leads, and they have done their due diligence, and it's turning out to not be true. That's why Hillary Clinton did not use it. That's why the Republican candidate who initially funded this dossier did not use it and eventually sold it to Hillary Clinton, but, you know, it was never used.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a bit of Oppo research that the people who paid for it didn't even bother using, but has somehow justified an 18-month investigation into the sitting president. If we flip this around, if, say, the GOP had found some French spy instead of an MI6 guy to come up with a salacious dossier saying the Democrat candidate is up to all kinds of kinky shenanigans in Eastern Europe, would you be happy to have the FBI investigate obvious nonsense for 18 months?
No, I would not. But it does, like I said, it's just their due diligence of investigating, leaving no stone unturned. But I want to remind you that what led to this was the firing of Director Comey very unceremoniously. No. And all of there were multiple instances of the Russian government trying to hack into voting systems in several states. So there were lots of things that triggered this. It was not just this dossier, as Donald Trump himself tried to allude to this morning.
Well, wait a minute. This Russia investigation has actually been going on for longer it predates the election. So in other words, why would the Russians be trying to hack into a voting machine in Iowa in June of 2016?
Mark, because they have an agenda to fulfill, and disrupting our way of democracy suits their agenda. They are our adversary. Make no mistake about it. I myself am a veteran Army Ranger. I know that Russia is our adversary. They are not looking out for our best interest.
Yeah, but we have a situation here where the only thing that any concrete that anyone's been able to find is that Putin paid for 100 grand's worth of Facebook ads. I never knew, speaking as someone who's not even eligible to run, I didn't know you could steal an election for 100,000 in Facebook ads when your candidate, Mrs. Clinton, spent $2/3 billion. You spend $2/3 billion, but a guy comes along and buys 100 grand of Facebook ads, and boom, snaffles the election away. Is that the theory?
No, like I said, I think the real problem here is when we found evidence that they tried to actually affect the voting machines in those states. That is a serious problem, and I'm glad that the FBI is looking into it. We should all do that. We should all want the FBI to make sure that our way of democracy is protected and defended. Well, they have an oath to defend and protect our Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. We have to make sure that Donald Trump is not an enemy of the state by colluding with Russia.
Well, taking your line that Russia is a geopolitical strategic enemy of the United States, they managed to get this election-stealing racket, whatever it is, hacking into voting machines in New Hampshire or Florida or wherever, up and running. We've been investigating this now for 18 months. Why can't the FBI wrap up an investigation into an election campaign in less than the 2-year period between elections?
Mark, we are not privy to that information, just like we were not privy to all of the information into Bill Clinton and Watergate, which ended up birthing the Monica Lewinsky scandal. We don't have all of that information. So it's impossible and preposterous for us right now to speculate on why it is taking this long. They are doing their jobs. They are public servants doing their jobs, and they're under attack on the daily by Donald Trump, who I think is doing a PSYOP campaign because he knows that there's more information coming, and he wants to plant a seed of doubt in the public. To me, that is reprehensible.
Well, Robin, thanks for framing it as a PSYOPs campaign. If you're actually targeted by the FBI, I'm not sure you need PSYOPs to want to protest against that. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch. And Tom, Robin was rather coy about that. But basically, this totally worthless dossier has had an incredible life. It's like a zombie. You cannot drive a stake through this piece of garbage thing that a foreign spy cooked up for the Democrats. It's running around like a mechanical hare all across town. Has it got any probative value, as the lawyers like to say?
Well, according to your news organization's reporting on the testimony of Andrew McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI, they couldn't confirm anything, or he refused to confirm anything beyond the fact that Carter Page, a campaign advisor to the Trump campaign, may have traveled to Russia.
Right.
Other than that, there's nothing they've been able to confirm. But what we have been able to confirm is that the authors of the Trump dossier were Clinton campaign vendors. And they were working with the Obama Justice Department and the Obama FBI. And the FBI of the Obama administration was, the leadership there was vehemently anti-Trump, it's now evident. And they laundered this campaign document into the Justice Department and FBI, and it may have been used to spy on the Trump campaign. And it still may be being used by Robert Mueller. Right. So, to the degree the dossier is still being used by Mueller, it's a real ethical concern because of where it came from.
No, I agree with you on that, Tom. I mean, in a sense, it's a bit like what in Hollywood Alfred Hitchcock used to call the MacGuffin. It's like used as the pretext to set the game afoot. In other words, it had no value as Oppo research to Hillary Clinton, but it had value to the government, the outgoing government, in getting them into a position where they could surveil their political opponents. That's the conspiracy theory.
And it gets even worse for Mrs. Clinton, because what happened is that Mrs. Clinton used her law firm, her campaign's law firm, as a cutout to spend money on this Fusion GPS dossier effort, who went to Russia, supposedly, to talk to intelligence people and intelligence sources in Russia. So you had the Clinton campaign spending money to send people to Russia to find dirt on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's the one under investigation on collusion. And to me, this is a political investigation. It was designed by never-Trumpers, anti-Trumpers, right, whatever you want to call it. James Comey obviously did not like President Trump, and he leaked information in order to get this appointment of Robert Mueller. And it's just gone downhill from there. Now we found out the top FBI agent under Mueller, in terms of counterintelligence, was a never-Trumper. The number 2, Andrew Weissman, the number 2 prosecutor on his team, attended Hillary Clinton's election night party. And was sending friendly emails to Sally Yates as she thwarted the rule of law at the Justice Department.
That's
the
actually,
Obama holdover.
That's actually incredible, Tom. Thank you for that.
Let's bring in Fox News contributor, former Republican congressman from Utah, Jason Chaffetz. Congressman, I did some digging. It took less than about 10 seconds to find a news story from this October about how Governor Brown was patting himself on the back for signing, yes, 3 new gun control bills into law. And Governor Brown's all about gun control, unless he wants to try to stick it to the president and put an immigrant convicted of a gun crime back on the streets. What in the world's going on here?
I mean, there's really no explanation for it. I mean, these are convicted criminals. These are people. This is not the, lady who crosses the border who's just trying to help her family. These are people that are here illegally, committed a crime, got caught, convicted, and now we're trying to deport them. The president's trying to do the right thing, and you have people like Governor Brown getting in the way of doing this. During the Obama administration, more than 80,000 times this happened. They were in our control. He released them back out into the public, and guess what? They committed hundreds of more crimes, and people died at the hands of these types of people. There's no reason why these people should continue to stay and have the privilege of being in the United States. They're here illegally to start with.
Congressman, you make an important point, because we know what happened in the case of Kate Steinle, where someone who had been convicted of several crimes was out on the streets in San Francisco. Here's what the president recently said about that.
Unfortunately, Democrats in Congress not only oppose our efforts to stop illegal immigration and crack down on sanctuary cities, every senator and congressman will have to make a choice. Do they want to protect American citizens, or do they want to protect criminal aliens?
It looks like the governor in this case is trying to protect criminal aliens.
Well, that's the point. Even when we talk to Democrats like Luis Gutierrez and some of these who put this issue at the top of their agenda, they have, at least in the past, said, well, okay, the criminal aliens, yeah, let's focus on them. And the president, I think, is trying to do the right thing. Let's deport those people that are here illegally and they're committing crimes. They've been before a judge. They've got caught doing a crime. They've done some time for that. Now it's time for them to leave the country and never, ever come back. Why do we put up with this? And now you have governors who aren't cooperating. And it's so demoralizing to our good people who work in ICE and the Border Patrol. I mean, they put their lives on the line to save us and protect us. And then you get somebody who commits a crime. He's involved in a gang, allegedly.
Right.
And now they want to be able to keep him there in California.
Well, Congressman, you make an important point. And on top of that, in this case, even if the governor pardons you for state crimes, that doesn't prevent the federal government and ICE from going out and actually getting you and deporting you, right?
That's right. And between Homeland Security and the Department of Justice, but a lot of this is on Homeland Security, they have got to be able to go and they don't need a governor's permission in order to deport somebody if they can get them in their control. But again, you have too many sanctuary states and counties and cities that don't want to cooperate with federal law enforcement. They want all of our American money, right? They want the federal taxpayer dollars to go to them, but they don't want to actually deport these people. And this is the criminal element. I don't see any argument to keep these people in town. I really don't.
Last question. The Daily Mail did an investigation that they just published today over the holidays, talking about hundreds of people in cities like Santa Monica, Santa Barbara, cities all across California where you have teachers, firefighters, middle-class workers who are homeless because they cannot afford the rent in California. They're living out of their cars in Walmart parking lots and elsewhere. So my question to you is, doesn't the governor of California, Jerry Brown, have some more important things to deal with right now than pardoning criminals?
I see this regularly with the Democrats. They prioritize those people that aren't here illegally, and they're committing crimes. And you're right, they got good people trying to do good things. They've run into trouble in their lives. There's a homelessness problem in a whole slew of states, including Utah and in California. And instead of the focus being on that, they're trying to protect the criminal aliens. And how could you ever look a family in the eye if one of these people goes back and does something and harms an American? How do you look them in the eye and say, yeah, I, as Governor Brown, made sure that they got to stay here and commit another crime?
With more,
it's sick. It
with
really is
more
disgusting.
governors considering these pardons, I suspect this is not the last we've heard of this. Congressman, Merry Christmas. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.